Lexus have never sold in huge numbers in the UK. However, last year they saw record new sales growth, selling 16,000 cars, and that was a whopping 50% up over the previous year. Now, a lot of that can be due to the lack of availability in the outgoing year. However, it can also be down to their really strong hybrid lineup. Whilst customers are not ready to go fully electric, hybrid is a great option, and nobody does hybrid better than Toyota and Lexus. They also introduced the Lexus LBX, a more affordable and slightly less powerful Lexus, set to bring in new customers, and it really seems to be working. And if you wanted to see my full review of the Lexus LBX, then you can click the link somewhere up there. However, that meant that their current smallest hybrid crossover, the UX, didn't really have a solidified position within the Lexus lineup. So they decided to give it some extra power and extra refinement to make it a better and more powerful car to drive. The outgoing car was called the UX250h, and it's now the UX300h. And in today's video, I'll tell you everything that you need to know about this latest UX. So if that sounds good, then please keep watching. And if you do like new car reviews and car content, then you're in the right place. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. But first of all, let's talk about styling, because whereas the Lexus LBX is a slightly softer Lexus, the UX is very much Lexus in its styling. It's very sharp. There's lots of sharp angles and edges, even on the door mirrors. You also have these sharp LED lights and this really sharp front grille. This grille is finished in gloss black because this is the slightly sportier version. You also have the dark chrome bar along the bottom. But let me know, what do you think of the UX's styling? The UX actually stands for urban crossover. It was when they first introduced crossovers. Of course, this car doesn't really have the ability to go off-road. It is more urban, but it is available in a four-wheel drive. And personally, I think it's a pretty good-looking car.
Lexus has made improvements to the performance of the UX Hybrid by focusing on acceleration and throttle response. The latest model has an 8% increase in total power compared to the previous UX250. This increase in power from 181 to 196 brake horsepower is achieved through the use of a new 60-cell 222-volt lithium-ion battery. If you choose to opt for the E4 four-wheel drive system, it's the quickest version of the UX Hybrid. The new rear electric motor is over 5 times more powerful than the one in the previous UX250. As a result, the 0 to 62 mph time is faster at 7.9 seconds, compared to the 8.7 seconds in the 250. The front-wheel drive versions have a slightly slower time of 8.1 seconds, but it still represents a noticeable improvement. To enhance the driving experience, Lexus has strengthened the body rigidity of the UX300 with a support brace on the radiator, resulting in a sportier ride.
Regardless of its actual off-roading capabilities, the UX has quite an off-roady feel about it. It's got these more robust squared-off wheel arches and a slightly higher up rear end. Now, boot space has never been the UX's strong point, and unfortunately this remains unchanged.
Opting for the four-wheel drive model means there's no space under the boot floor, resulting in capacity of just 283 litres. That's less than you'll get in the back of a Vauxhall Corsa. On the front-wheel drive models like this one, there is more storage below, and even this has a maximum 320 litres, which is pretty poor for this class of car.
And whilst that means it's not ideal for lifting heavy items into the boot, as there's quite a high load area to have to lug them to, if you're just putting things like your handbags in there, then it's absolutely the perfect height. You also do have an adjustable boot floor, so if you wanted to hide your items away, you can do that as well. Space in the back is just okay. It's not exceptional, but it's not particularly bad. I've got a decent amount of legroom and an okay amount of headroom. There could be more legroom, there could be more headroom. But I think if you're just carrying children in the back, it will be fine. You've got 2 ISOFIX fitments in the back here. You've got a pull-out armrest with a couple of cup holders, no through loading, although it doesn't surprise me with the size of that boot. You have got a door pocket on the back of the passenger's seat, but nothing on the back of the driver's, which is a bit of a shame. You've also got two USB-C chargers, which are just behind little covers in the back here. And actually, you've got quite a low transmission tunnel, so leg space for the middle seat passenger will be pretty good. But it is compact here, and it doesn't feel like the back of this car has been set up for rear seat passengers. For instance, you've got cup holders in the middle, but you haven't really got anything in the doors. It just feels a little bit of an afterthought, but after all, this is an urban crossover, and that means really it's for people who are doing short distances, travelling around town, probably are going to be on their own or maybe with small children, and for that I think it's perfectly fine. Not too much has actually changed on the interior of the UX, but it's no bad thing because it's a very palatable cabin. There's not too much to dislike in here. It could be feeling old-fashioned, but actually I think it pulls it off quite nicely. You've got this lovely centre console which is nice and low, and it gives you a feeling of space within the cabin. I also like the way that in Lexus cars everything is just slightly layered onto the dashboard. You've actually got a redesigned centre console, not hugely different, but there's a new gear selector and it's trimmed in a new material. This is plastic, but it actually feels quite high quality, and I like the fact that it definitely wouldn't be smudgy. You're not going to get fingerprints all over it. You also have redesigned door controls as well, but otherwise it feels very familiar in here. You still get the very cool centre storage, which opens both for the passenger and also for the driver. I've always quite liked that. It's very simple. Storage is pretty good. You've got a decent amount of storage inside of there. You've also got two cup holders. You've got some wireless charging up front. You've got a nice amount of space in the door cards, and you've also got an average sized glove box that is a tiny bit small, and I think that's due to the way that the dashboard is stacked up. You've still got physical climate control dials, and they're really easy to use, as well as these slightly funny controls that stick out of the digital driver's display. On the left hand side you've got your drive mode buttons, and on the right side you've got your ESC to turn that off. It does feel a little bit weird to have these. They almost look a little bit like Shrek's ears. Are they ears? I think they're ears on the side of his head, but that always reminds me a bit of that. I'm sure I've got that from somebody else's review. If you remember who first said that, then pop it in the comments down below, because I don't want to be stealing anyone's jokes. But overall, quality in here feels just spot on Lexus. Most of the places that you touch are really soft. You've got leather pretty much trimmed all the way up to the tops of the doors. This is a tiny bit scratchy, but it's nowhere near like the plastics that you get in other brands. And I quite like the fact that you've got this almost denim effect on top of the dashboard. It's just a little bit different. But what about the infotainment system? The updated version of the UX does now feature a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster, and you get the choice of two screens depending on which spec you go for, an 8-inch screen and a 12.3-inch screen to match the size of the cluster. This screen does possibly feel a little bit small for this car. It reminds me a lot of the Citroën C5 Aircross, which I tested recently, which had a similar size screen, which is starting to feel a little on the small side. It just feels a tiny bit outdated, but what I will say is the graphics are very, very crisp. Although I have to say, it looks very crisp in Apple CarPlay. However, when you move through the standard settings, it's just a little bit dull in comparison, which I think is a bit of a shame, because overall it's a very nice, clean infotainment system. I also love the fact that even when you're on your Apple CarPlay, you still have the physical shortcut buttons down the side, which is not always available. You also have an online satellite navigation, which is brilliant because this gives you real-time traffic updates, and it'll even tell you if there's parking spaces available. However, if you happen to have no network coverage like I have now, it will still be able to navigate without it. So not too many changes to the interior and exterior, but what about underneath the bonnet? Well, Lexus have worked really hard in lots of different areas to just make this car, well, more Lexus. Because here's the thing about the Lexus LBX, it's an extremely capable car and it does feel far more refined than the Toyota Yaris Cross on which it's based. But it still doesn't really feel properly like a Lexus. It's kind of a new product, whereas they wanted the UX to feel more classically Lexus. And they've done that by adding acoustic glass and more soundproofing underneath the bonnet to give it a more serene and quiet driving experience. They've also worked on the ride and handling to make it more engaging when you're around the back roads, but also just nicer to drive around town as well. And I think that all of that has really paid off. So has the uplift in power. This actually feels like a very capable car to drive. And it has a great kind of changeable personality. It's really economical if you want to drive it that way, and I've been seeing in excess in 60 miles per gallon. But also, if you want an engaging car to drive, it can do that too. Put your foot down and instantly this car comes alive. And it even gives you a half decent sound from the engine. Just overall, it is a better car to drive, but it is more expensive. So it did need to be a better car to drive, but I'm really glad that they have made these tweaks to this car because it was already pretty good and it's just better than it was before.
The UX is available in 4 trim levels, starting with the Urban trim, priced at just under £35,000. This trim includes features like a reversing camera, a fully digital instrument cluster, and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Above the Urban is the Premium trim line, which adds additional features such as a heated steering wheel and driver monitoring. It also includes a larger screen display and leather upholstery, amongst other extras. Above the Premium Plus trim levels is the Takumi line, which offers even more luxurious features. In addition to these basic grades, there's also the F Sport alternatives, like the model that I've been driving in today's video. These trims provide slightly sportier styling options on top of the tech provisions offered by the basic levels. The F Sport trims start at £37,495 for the F Sport design, and they go up to the range-topping F Sport Takumi all-wheel drive, which is priced at £50,995.
The Lexus LBX has given the UX a pretty tough job. It needs to be able to justify its higher price tag over its baby brother. Although, when I drove the Lexus LBX, I mentioned that it's a very good car, but it didn't really feel like a Lexus in the way that it drove, and I thought a lot of customers may be slightly disappointed. And that's where the UX comes in. This car offers to plug that position that if you want a car which is a better car to drive, a more engaging car to drive, then this is your option. But let me know, do you think they've done enough changes to the UX300h to make it competitive within the market? Pop it in the comments down below. I really hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Until next time, guys, see you later.